Evolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host Rich Gear here as well, and we have a guest with us, Guy Forsythe. I haven't seen you in a long time. It's really good to see you. You look great. We have so. Anyway, Doug, start us.
Well, Guy, we visit once in a while when we come out to Arizona, and he lives in Sedona. He has a ministry called Crying Rocks.
Right.
And I'm going to allow him to talk a little bit about it because it is, I think, it's played a significant part in what we have done. When I bring people out, I go out and visit the guy, and he takes us out in the canyons and everything. Yeah. And we also have David Vonderheide with us. And say hi to us, David.
Well, yeah, hi. There he is.
There he is. Well, David was a fellow that we stayed with in Flagstaff, and so when we visited that area of the world, we would go visit these two characters. And I'm really grateful for the insights that you brought us and what you've done for us. And so I'm going to let Guy tell us a little bit about what his ministry is in Arizona. You have a place called The Gathering Place, right?
Yes, we have a coffee shop on the main street in Sedona where everything is free, Wi-Fi, billiards table, coffee, teas, and we just use it to try to get conversation going and find opportunities to talk to people about Jesus.
Well, I think it's interesting, Doug, because we've been doing it in his new book that's just come out. You said this week, right, Doug?
Yes.
And don't let your geology mess up your theology. Just came out this week, and what you're going to talk about where you are kind of segues quite good because we've been going kind of chapter by chapter through the book, and now what you're going to talk about in his chapter kind of it actually lines up. Is that correct, Doug?
Yeah, and that was done on purpose.
And I figure it was done on purpose. I know it was done on purpose. It's not just
so I
accidental.
called up Guy and says we're going to have him on our show, and we'll talk about that area of the world because he knows a lot about it.
Right. So anyway, without any further ado,
and behind you, you've got one of the prime examples of what some of the anomalies I talk about in my book.
Yeah, that's lizard head with a parabolic recumbent fold. It's actually part of a sheath fold, which are extremely rare. There is a ridge that you can see off to the side that's running 90 degrees to the surface that's behind me, and it has the same parabolic recumbent fold in it, which you shouldn't see them at 90-degree angles. So it's actually a fold that's kind of a bowl shape. And they're quite mysterious, very, very rare, and I'm thrilled to be sitting in front of one of them.
Well, any thoughts on how that works with the flood geology, or are we puzzled as well?
It's definitely water, deposited in water and shaped during deposition. Most of the parabolic recumbent folds around Sedona, and I found 24 of them, are just one direction, and they are definitely formed during deposition and show that the coconino, it's in the coconino formation, it shows that the coconino was deposited very, very rapidly during the flood.
So where is this lizard rock at anyway? Where?
It's on the west end of Sedona.
Okay.
I can see it from my house.
Okay.
And he took us up there a couple of times. I think my brother Steve went up with you when he came out. And so we went and saw this. And I had my 360-degree camera with me. And so I didn't get any still shots, which I find that the 360-degree camera is practically useless in terms of actually doing something that's decent for media. So.
I know,
It's kind of fun, but it's it really doesn't live up to the hypes. So there's a lot of different things in Sedona that we visited. I remember that you also had provided me a few pictures that I incorporated greedily in my book. That was it talked about seismites and and water pipes and things like that. Explain to me a little bit of some of these anomalies that you find.
Okay. In Sedona, we have quite a few water pipes, primarily in Boynton, Long Canyon, and on top of Coxcomb. Uh, and a water pipe is when you have wet sediment and an earthquake occurs, and it shoots a column of material up through the sediment. And when you look at the top of it, you look down at a rock surface, you can actually see there's a circle there. And the strata, rather than being layered like you see when you're looking at a face like the one behind me here, instead you're looking down on a flat surface that's horizontal, and you can see a round strata. The strata is literally concentric circles. And then you can have seismites, or excuse me, injectites, and we have two of those on top of Coxcomb, and that's where the material comes from way below, and it's actually a different material than what it's in. Classic example of that is Kodachrome Basin State Park just south of Tropic, Utah, where they have the most famous injectite there is 50 feet in diameter, 150 feet tall, and is made of material that is found 800 feet below where you're standing as you look at it. So an earthquake actually shoots this material up in a round column. They're almost always almost perfectly round as they shoot up.
How does an earthquake form a column like that? I guess I'm guess you say the layers at that point still somewhat plastic, still liquid, or how do?
Still very liquid, yes.
Okay. And are these like little spot, like you say, earthquake? Why does it shoot a geyser up? Is that what it is? Kind of a geyser, or what? I mean,
I guess you could think of it as a geyser because it's water that's got a lot of sediment in it.
yeah.
What happens is when you have an earthquake, they resonate in different places. So like in San Francisco, the famous one where the freeway fell down, it happened to resonate right where that freeway is. And you go a couple hundred feet away and there's no damage. And you might see a big building somewhere that's, knocked off its foundation, and place next door, there's no damage because the resonant spots can be very, very small. And that's what happens with these water pipes is you have a resonance in a very small area, and that just slams the material that's down low, and that material has to go somewhere. And in Sedona, we actually have horizontal water pipes. And horizontal water pipes are generally actually a vertical slit. So in Boynton Canyon and other places, we have places where there are slits, vertical slits, generally about 12 to 18 inches tall. In Boynton Canyon, there's multiple of them over about a quarter of a mile, about 30 inches apart. And you can slip a piece of paper back in it and see that they're all oriented in the same direction. So an earthquake launched water, and water, like electricity, tries to follow the path of least resistance. But in those cases where you have a horizontal water pipe, that means the resistance was less going horizontal than going up, which means there was a lot of strata on top of that location when that water pipe occurred. And all that strata had to be wet and not lithified hardly at all.
Now let's talk about the Coconino sandstone that's in Sedona versus in the Grand Canyon. Isn't it a different level?
No, they're at about the same level in the canyon and in Sedona. A difference you have is that at the Grand Canyon, you have the Coconino setting directly on top of the Hermit. In Sedona, there's about 800 feet of Schnebly Hill Formation between the Hermit and the Coconino.
Okay, well, that's what I remembered. Yeah, the Schnebly Hill Formation isn't in the Grand Canyon, but and so you've got the Hermit is sort of lower in elevation than what it is in the canyon.
Yeah, there's some variation there, but the distance between here and the canyon is about 80 miles, and 800 feet difference in 80 miles is really still considered kind of flat.
Oh, negligible. Okay. All right. Yeah.
It's a very gradual grade.
But anyway, there's tell us a little bit about the Crying Rocks organization that you have and what you actually do.
Okay. Well, the organization is my wife Cindy and myself. I retired from teaching in Ohio in 2003, and the Lord led us to Sedona. And we said, well, what are we going to do when we get there? And he said, don't worry about it. So we moved to Sedona and spent the first 6 months, that was in June of 2003, spent the first 6 months just getting used to the Western culture. It's very different from the East. For example, right after I got here, I ended up going to a funeral, and I was one of 4 people that wore a suit, and we were all old. You don't wear a suit in Arizona for anything. It just, I suppose businessmen do down in Phoenix, but the rest of the world doesn't here. So in around February of 2004, the Lord put in my mind to start a nonprofit and publish a newsletter. I was a yearbook advisor at my high school, and so I had a lot of experience with the printing industry and doing color and all that kind of stuff. And so we started publishing a newsletter. Here's the latest one. I have to hold it here so it doesn't get blocked out. This is a 11 by 17 that's folded a couple of times like that.
Yeah.
And we we mail that out to every house and business in Sedona, which right now numbers about 11,000. And we mail that out 4 times a year. So since 2004, I believe, let's see, this one is number 82. So we've mailed out a newsletter 82 times to every house and business in Sedona.
Wow. Do you get much response? I mean, how does that go? I mean, you know.
In the beginning, got a lot of response, both positive and negative. Now I don't get a whole lot of response, but when I talk to people and it comes up, a lot of them will say, well, you know, I'm not a believer, but it's really interesting what's in there. So it's, you know, God kind of made it clear to me that when we came out here and started the ministry, it was, for me, it was not so much trying to bring people to Christ as it is battling the worldview of materialism.
Mm.
And so that's what I really try to do with the newsletter, is show that materialism is a false religion.
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of what we do. We're sort of the people who dig out the rocks and cut down the trees and dig out the stumps and try to prepare plow the field so that then you can plant some seeds and get ready for the harvest.
Well, if you realize, we've always in our path, we've always recognized that, you know, we can't make somebody a believer. That's the whole job of the Holy Spirit. But what we can do is remove obstacles to faith, because there's a lot of things out there, a lot of propaganda, a lot of false information, secular information, materialistic, you know, that really has a very much of an opposite worldview position, which is what you're talking about. And people bring some of these arguments up, and we just want to remove those obstacles. And I think that sounds like what you're doing as well.
Yeah, we're glad that we were in this kind of ministry, because I think it's been sort of interesting to watch people's reaction.
Yeah, because Doug and I, neither one of us are confrontational in our demeanors. We're not really interested in that so much. People there's some people, I swear, they just love arguments. I've never been a big fan of that, and sometimes it can be productive for maybe somebody else, but the person you're talking with, it never seems to do a whole lot. And then everybody comes off all agitated and upset, and I don't think that's really a positive so much. But I'm not saying there's not a purpose or a place for that, but I like the idea that we can, you know, rather than debate, we can have a conversation, and speak to those things. Sounds like your magazine or your newsletter seems like it could open up some doors in ways. Oh, you do that, Oh, you're the one that produced that. Oh, yeah, I just read something the other day. I was looking through it the other day and I saw this or whatever, and then you can engage in. I have a real problem with this thought because I'm hearing it, whatever, and then you can go into it. Did you find you get to do that from time to time? Is that how that works?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely.
At the gathering place, you get a chance to do that, one-on-one, and I think that's the real ministry, is to be able to, Rich and I talk about back of the head worship, where you have a big congregation sitting in the auditorium and have one guy preaching, and but where you really get something productive in terms of actually getting some work done for the gospel, is when you do it on one-on-one.
That's a kind of a discipleship type of thing anyway. It's just that's where you get into some of the nitty gritty. And as I say, a lot of people don't really understand why this time scale. You're doing geological stuff. People have asked me, not so much these days. I think the creation message has gotten out there pretty well, and it resonates with people, or it doesn't, but they're not unfamiliar with some of the arguments. And the geology, even though all the propaganda is still all in the uniformitarian philosophy, from education to government programs to entertainment to learning channel stuff. I don't care what it is; it's all uniformitarian. And often, as people don't really understand why do you spend so much time not only on creation evolution issues, but why the geological stuff and why the time frame is so important. And a lot of people don't really understand that part of it. And that, and it doesn't mean, like I say, we've never come across, I don't think, Answers in Genesis. You or anybody else will say you can't be a believer if you believe in long ages, but it basically undermines what you're trying to share with people. When people wake up, they go, well, how could this be true if death existed before Adam, then what's the purpose of Jesus Christ and the sacrifice? Yeah, I didn't really undo it, and all the ad hoc and after the fact explanations to try to get around those don't seem to satisfy the next generation. You may get away with it, but your next generation certainly hardly ever does. So I think this geological stuff that you're doing, you've been doing this for since 2003, you said?
Yes.
Wow, yeah. We've been doing this show since what, 1993?
Yes.
So we had a 10-year thing on you, but still, that's a good long time. It really is. It was a very nice newsletter. It was a nice looking format there. Yeah.
So, Guy, if you were going to conduct a tour in Sedona,
yeah,
and wanted to show people some creation geology, where would you start?
I'd start by saying, how comfortable are you gaining 1,000 feet in elevation when you hike? Because all the good stuff is not down here on the ground floor. It's all halfway up the mountains.
You got to work for it. That's why you look so good, Guy. You're doing all these hikes still,
Yeah. The hikes are a little more taxing now than they were 10 years ago, but...
Boy, tell me about it. When I was out there one time, we went out there and I had a bad knee problem when I was out there. That was really brutal. I made it, but boy, I gritted my teeth all the way. And now I got feet issues and everything else. So it gets, you get older, things do get a little more difficult. But it's neat that you still do that, though.
Yep, absolutely.
How long did you teach in Ohio?
I taught technology.
Yeah.
Education.
For how long?
30 years.
30 years. Wow. And you're still doing this. I'm really amazed. I'm very impressed with that. Yeah.
My second year of teaching, I knew that 30 years was when you could retire with benefits. And my second year of teaching, I decided, 30 years of one thing is enough. When I hit 30 years, it's time for a new adventure.
Yep, that's fair enough.
I had no idea what that adventure would be, but here I am.
You're doing it, yeah. Wow, that's impressive.
People want to know more about the geology of Sedona. On our website, we have back copies of the newsletter, and from spring of 2015 to winter of 2016, there are 4 issues that go over all of the things you will find in Sedona, the water escape mechanisms, all about the coconino. Um, Everything you'd ever want to know about Sedona geology is in those 4 issues.
So when you're doing your tours, what are like the top 3 or 4 or 5 things that you like to point out to get people from a different maybe mindset, or to confirm things they maybe already believe but didn't really have the answers to? I mean, do you have like a top 5 or a top 3 type things that really you like to point out? I mean, there are a lot of interesting anomalies and strange things, but what are the things that really, that in your mind, would be like the most convincing? You know?
Well, I don't do tours in Sedona.
Not Sedona, I mean, yeah,
But I did do tours for Canyon Ministries at the Grand Canyon for 5 years when they started doing more than just raft trips. I was doing South Rim tours. And the Grand Canyon has one of the best pieces of evidence for the rapid deposition and erosion from the flood that there is. And that is in the Redwall limestone. The entire Redwall limestone was formed by groundwater sapping. And you won't find it on any of the plaques there. If you go to Canyonlands, you can see the sapping. You won't find it on any of the plaques there about sapping. But when you dig up papers written by geologists on how all of these structures formed in the Redwall limestone at the Grand Canyon and the Navajo sandstone at, I hate getting old. Words just appear. I just said Canyonlands. What happened is everything got deposited, and then as the Colorado River started eroding down, the cliffs on the side were saturated with water, and that water actually sapped out and brought with it the material, and you're left with a semicircle amphitheater. And you can't get that by erosion action. You can only get it through sapping action. And that means that material had to be deposited and then eroded in a very short period of time, because that material still has to be absolutely saturated with water in order for sapping to occur. I think it's a fabulous proof of Noah's flood, but you don't see it much among the creationists.
Huh? Maybe they're not aware of it so much. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
But you talk about a lot about it in your newsletter.
Actually, the latest newsletter talks about sapping at the Grand Canyon, and
does it? Okay, interesting.
So they can go online and onto our website, cryingrocks.org, and go to newsletters, and it'll be the latest entry on the newsletters. They can download the PDF and read away.
All right.
So we have been out there several times, and you took us up to Lizard Head, which is kind of neat, and also to, I think it was Fay Canyon. Is that what it is?
Fay Canyon is a little ways away from there, but yeah, we probably went to Fay Canyon too.
You take us to several places, yeah.
And there was a place where it was like a pit of some sort.
That would have been the Devil's Kitchen.
There you go. Yeah.
It's a sinkhole.
Oh yes. Talk about that a little bit. That was interesting. Yeah.
It's kind of a squarish hole. It's probably 50 feet across both ways, 50 feet in diameter, but kind of squared off. And what happened was in the early 1900s, what is thought has happened is the Redwall limestone, 800 feet down, that's where all the water in Sedona comes from. All of our drinking water is from the Redwall limestone down underneath, because limestone tends to have rivers in them because the water dissolves the limestone, makes a passageway.
Okay.
And what they think happened is that there was a chamber there that the roof of it eventually collapsed, and it just kind of kept collapsing up and up and up and up until it hit the surface. And then the Devil's Kitchen it's probably about 40 feet deep. And down there is just all this broken rock from collapsing into that hole.
And, there's a lot of interesting rock formations in Sedona. You have the coffee pot. And also the coxcomb, which is you can see from your picture window, is kind of neat.
Right.
Then
Snoopy Rock you mentioned earlier.
Snoopy Rock, that's kind of neat, and so it's really a beautiful landscape. And I like going up on by the airport where you can see a whole view of the
Pretty good panorama. Mm-hmm.
And you were going to create a museum out there one time, and
Oh, we kind of dreamed a little bit, but where you and I went to where it would be a beautiful location for it is now a restaurant where it's $100 a head to get out.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Well, yeah.
You want a baked potato with that? That'll be $10.
Wow. So this is the high price crowd. This is a pretty pricey area, though. Anyway, isn't it?
It is and it isn't.
Or is there places that are
Around town that are reasonable,
Oh, really? Okay.
not any worse than any big city.
Yeah.
but it is in a kind of an interesting environment. You have a lot of strange religions hanging around there.
A lot of
yeah,
new
I
age.
forgot about that. Yeah.
It's the new age mecca of the United States.
Is it really? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So when you engage with people who are involved in that kind of stuff, what any kind of interesting things, tidbits, conversations, memorable things?
Hard with the new agers because they're totally irrational.
Exactly.
They violate the first law of logic, which is A and not A cannot be the same. And they can believe A and not A at exactly the same time. And it's just, how do you deal with that? It's what they feel in their heart. So that's what their truth is. And so they can have two truths that contradict each other.
Oh, wow.
And so it's the whole thing where my truth may not be your truth, and your truth may not be my truth, and we're all good with that. And you just got to be tolerant of my truth, and that's what I call truth decay.
Yeah, I need a spiritual dentist to fix that, you know?
Yeah, something's got to come out.
Yeah, well, if you're going to get to the root of the problem.
I think so. Yes.
Okay, sorry, we're going to have some bad puns here at the end of the show here. You tell we're getting a little loopy, guys. It's just.
Well, we really appreciate what you are doing and what we were able to do when we went out to visit you. We always go to see you when we go see the Grand Canyon, and it's. And I appreciated David being out there because he'd always host us.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, yep. So,
but now David is in Pennsylvania, and we can't take advantage of his hospitality.
Yeah.
And David has forgotten 10 times more than I've ever known about igneous rock.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
We'd come across igneous rock and he'd start talking, and I'd just fade out. I mean, he just really knows his stuff.
So David's the true fault finder in all this, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
But and we really appreciated David. He came with us when Ian Juby took us out to Joggins in Nova Scotia, and that was kind of fun.
Polystrate fossils.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, my book, Don't Let Your Geology Mess Up Your Theology, is now online. It is available on Amazon, and hopefully you can pick up a copy. It's something that I've been working on for quite a number of years, and I've had the title for about 20 years.
Yeah, a long time.
But now it's reality. And Guy, thanks for joining us on our show. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.
Yeah, goodbye.